Okay, so where are we here? We're at the bottom of page Tov Samach Beis in Ayin Beis, chapter 228, Reish Chav Ches. And the Rebbe Rashab, to sum up, what's he doing now? He's explaining, he's tying it all together, as we know. We started the new mimer. It's like 5 levels in the Torah that go through the whole Ishtalshus from Keser all the way through. How Torah goes into Biyah. And to explain it all, connects it back to that pasuk in Yeshaya Chavhei, Simon Chavhei, Perik Chavhei, about Hashem Elokei Ata Aramemcha. That refers to Hashem Elokei Ata, refers to the spheres, all the spheres, from Chachma Bina through Malchus, Vatzilus. Aramemcha means exalting it, lifting it up to Keser, in order to bring down an Er Chadash, a new energy which has the power to be mevatel the klippa of Malchus de Noiga. In order to get something, or to go down deeper, you have to go up higher. And then he explains, as he says, the Eifen Hamshach, how this is done, the method, the Eifen. And that's the continuation of the pasuk, Kasisa Pella Eitzes Merachik Amunas Uman. Kasisa Pella goes on Chachmeh. And here he brought the first explanation of Zohar, that Pella is Kisri and Levush to Atik. It's a cover for Atik. It's how Chachma goes up to Keser, and in a way conceals it, but not conceals it like a garment in a diminishing way. It's more going into the etz, deeper into the etzim, so it's like a Helam Atzmi, a fundamental concealment. The deeper premise of Meichus Timah, as we learned much earlier. And as we see, that's therefore a person who has Meichin the Gadlus, the ability to conceal the Tainuk, because Tainuk is really Chochmeh, but Mechus is really Tainuk, pleasure, that just came down to Chochmeh. And this Chochmeh Stamah becomes the interface between the Tainuk of Atik and Chochmeh, I guess the external Chochmeh Stamah, and then which is the root for Chochmeh Gluya. Okay. So that's how Pella, Chachma, that's Pella. Pella is Keser. And therefore Chachma, which has the power to become the concealer of Keser, so to speak, is also called Pella. Now in chapter 228, he began Pirush number 2. That the Zohar has another shot on the words is Kasisa Pella. The Pella is Asius Aleph, Kasisa Aleph. What's Aleph? So the Zohar says Aleph is Aleph Bina, meaning how Chachma comes down now into Bina, and he explains how the shape of the letter itself is made up of 3 parts: a right side and a left side and a center like leg, like the body, which is the Aleph has the Yud on top, the Yud on the bottom, and the diagonal center. And all that is one. That's why the number of Aleph, the numerical gematria of Aleph is Achad, because it connects all these things. And the Rebbe Rashab, of course, explains the Zohar. What's the meaning of the Zohar? That this is different than the first Pirush. In the first Pirush, the Chachmas Pella is how Chachma goes on to Keser, and as a Kisei Levush, it's a cover and a garment for the hidden light of Atik. And that is explained in the context of Chachmas Timah, the hidden Chachma, the unconscious Chachma that is Stimus V'Helam, completely concealed. But that is not Chachma. This is the way he uses the word. It's not Chachma Tzad Atzmi. That's not the personality of Chachma on its own. It's how Chachma is going somewhere, maybe to its source, to its highest level. But Chachma on its own is actually, its nature is Gilui, not Helam. So really, basically, we learned this in a sense in the different Oishis, that Chachma has 2 sides to it. It has the Haflah, and has the Yerida. But now he's going and dissecting even further. What is the nature of Chachma, and what is it, so to speak, Chachma going outside of itself? So in the interface, Chachma goes definitely into Keser, which is the first Pirush of Zohar, and it's critical because we need to connect to the source. We need to connect to Atik and to pleasure. But here he's starting to emphasize now, but that's not Chochmah Mitzad Atzmei. That's the words of the Rebbe Hashem. The Adrabah, on the contrary, Chochmah Mitzad Atzmei, B'chinas Gili. I'll read inside now. B'chinas Gili. Adrabah, Chochmah Mitzad. So the first Pirush is talking about Chochmah now, not as its Mitzad Atzmei, meaning its own identity. Chochmah Mitzad Atzmei, the Adrabah. How do we know that? So he brings a pasuk. Alef-peleh chochmah. When we say alef-peleh chochmah, chochmah is alef-peleh, which is aleph, of course. What means alef-peleh? Shebchins ulfa nevelim dahin b'chinas agili. Chochmah's nature, just the definition, wisdom. Wisdom, by definition, means agili. For example, amuna or kabbalah seil, or you can just say silence, or whatever. But the definition of wisdom is some type of process of understanding something. It may be the beginning of the process. So wisdom, by definition, is a form of teaching, which means immediately some form of revelation. So unconscious, for example, or keser, as we're going to say in a minute, tainug, etc., that's by nature, it's concealed. But Chochmah by nature is by its personality, is really a personality of Gili. The Zel kol b'chinas HaChochmah, these b'chinas Gili. That's the whole thing of Chochmah, is to be Gili. U'kumay b'nefesh. He's talking here Chochmah in general, Chochmah d'Atzilus, Chochmah on all levels. But let's talk now in the faculties of the person. Because Chochmah has many aspects to it. In the nefesh of the person, the nefesh, in the spirit, in the soul. Harideshes HaGili, the beginning of the Gili, like the first sphera in Atzilus and every Hukayach HaChochmah. The first Reishis HaGili that comes in the order of the process of a human being's spectrum of experience is the Reishis HaGili is Chochmah. Koyach HaChochmah. V'Hagilu b'chinas pnimi davke. And Gilu is pnimi. This is all in the beginning of the Hemshech. He talked about that. Pnimi, just as I said yesterday, but I'll just define it again. Pnimi means a few things. It means a energy that is localized, is distinct, and has and is mislabish, manifest like a glove, like a hand in a glove, in a particular keli. So by definition, that's a gather of gili. What does it mean, gili? Let's say the eye, the power of vision in the eye, the power of hearing in the ear, the power of writing in the fingers, the power of intellect in the brain. So in the beginning of the Hemshech, he spoke, Rotzen is everywhere. It's not localized. Where's Rotzen rest? It doesn't rest anywhere. It doesn't have a particular organ or body part or area. Rotzen is a makav dika kayach, which means it hovers, and it manifests wherever it has to manifest. But Pnimi, by definition, has a very specific function. And therefore, essentially, it's Keiches Giluyim. Now, there is a Keich HaNelam, you can say, the power of vision before it enters the eye, obviously exists in the nerve system and then all the way in the brain. But we're talking about, obviously, as it manifests. We're not talking how it's in its root, where it's Behelim. So, Keich, generally, a Keich means Keiches Giluyim. That's what we mean by Keiches Giluyim. If someone asks, what Keiches Giluyim? It means that all the time the Keiches be Gili? Of course not. But like for example, I'm not writing with my fingers all the time, but the fingers are constantly have the ability to do so. It's not like some type of whole avodah that you need to go reach somewhere to find. These are called Keiches Gluim. We have 10 natural faculties that are called Keiches Gluim. They're Chacham Bina Das, Chesed Gvur Tefes, Netzach Chaydi Malchus, Meichen and Midas. We're talking now again not in Keser, not Chachmas Temah. So basically, Chachma is the beginning of that Gili. That's a Pnimi Dafke. That's called the Koyach HaChochma. And now he's going to make the distinction. Because remember, we're talking here Chachma in contrast to the first Pirush in the Zohar. The first Pirush in the Zohar is Moiches Tima, concealed Chachma, unconscious, as it goes and is Mailim to Keser and to Tainuk. Here he's talking about Chachma Mitzad Atzmei. What is Chachma on its own? Not, in other words, as it goes into its source, or which I'm sure he'll get back to. Chachma Tzon is Gili. So to really drive the point home, he's going to contrast it with its source, with Tainug, which is really where the Chochmas Tamar goes to, Atik, basically. Like in the first parish in the Zohar. That's why he's bringing Tainug here. Because if Tainug is Gili, then what's the difference between the two Perushim and Zohar? Understand? So basically he says like this. Tahari Tainug ubchinis helen benefesh. Pleasure, desire, is bechinis helen benefesh. It's concealed inside the nefesh. Ukidua. Now what he's bringing here, the difference between Tainug and Simcha, is only to really emphasize this point of Tainug, helen. It's not really coming to explain Simcha or other things. It's just he's citing. So Kiyudua, like it says, Kiyudua as it's known, ha'hefresh ben Tainug l'Simcha. And by the way, he spoke about this difference between Tainug and Simcha earlier. Remember yesterday we even looked at it. Do you remember where? It's confusing where it is. 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. I just want to see, because since it's in the same body of discussion, it would be good to yeah, he's definitely referring back to this area here. Perek Reish Beis is what I'm just looking at. I think there's also more. Oh, yeah, Perek Kuf Tzadik Beis. It's actually very close to the beginning. It talks about alef-peleh. Look at Perek Kuf Tzadik Beis, page Shin Tzadik Aleph. He's really just summing up what it says there. So if you see, it says Kol Zeh Inyan Aleph Masha Chachma Meir Melamed L'Bchinas Bina. Amram Inyan Peleh Shu Heipach Eishiz the Aleph Hanevu Keshachachma El L'Mayla U'Malemes L'Er HaKeser. He mamish saying the same thing here. The B'chinas Keser, B'chinas Helen. And it should B'chinas Helen L'Gam Shen Abba B'chinas Mokel Ishtalshus. Let's just read it a moment, because it's very, very connected here. I'm skipping a few lines. You see after the parentheses. So it goes on. The same thing he said here. That Chachma can conceal. And he gets here's what I've said. Ben simcha la'enig. The simcha him bina habina. K'meshikasav em habonim smecha. The b'chinas bina liya shezeh bo. Shezeh masha bo b'yispashtus b'yisrachus. Shasechel bo b'yizgalas mamash ba'asoga b'ribay protein. That's what I'm sure he's referring to. Al kain bo mezeh b'chinas ha-simcha shi b'yizgalas u'poel his galas kol dover nelam. As we see, do you have to translate or you got that? No. The teva simcha lifrit together. Kameshakasa b'simcha samak t'samach. Mashenkin hataynik liyesib b'chinas hachachma she'ena b'chinas his galus. Adayin adra b'chinas nekuda she'in hakivut v'sgalus ba'atzmi. Alkein gam hataynik ena b'his galus v'spashas. V'hiya hefresh ben moedim l'simcha. Remember we spoke yesterday about orchim. B'chinas meichen de'ima or b'Shabbos v'karosh l'Shabbos enig meichen de'aba. So that's the difference in Yom Tov and Shabbos. But then he goes on and speaks about how Einik does come out begili, like on the face of a person. That's what we talked about, and that's where Chachma has the power to even control that. Okay, I just wanted to refer back to that. That was one place. And what was the second thing I just said? I said that was Kuf Tzadik Beis. The second one, what did I just? Reish. Reish Beis. 1 second, I think Reish Beis. Yeah. At the bottom of Tov Tes also defines. You see, what I would do here is I'd actually mark on this page to look back there, because you see, he's definitely summing up what he said earlier, and that's why if you just learn this on your own, that's why you can miss the whole point and misunderstand it. Like even this word hasaga, you see clearly that he said it's hasaga in a whole 2 lines. So he's clearly referring back to that. He's just summing it up here. So that's why I refer back to it myself, because I want to really understand. Yeah. So in Reish Beis, at the bottom, he talks about Einik. Again, that Einik is the Etzem. I just want to see, I think he mentions also Simcha there. Okay, I don't think, the middle there. Okay, it's not as significant. Okay. Fine. Let's go back here now. So bottom line is that there's a difference in Tainug and Simcha. Simcha begili, v'hu min hasoga dafka. Simcha is revealed, and it comes from hasoga, meaning that there is, hasoga itself means gili. It means there's an appreciation of something, there's some type of comprehension.
And it brings everything out with it.
Yeah. I guess he's not talking about a simcha, like for example, the simcha of the wedding of a child. Where's the hasoga there? There's no hasoga necessarily. But hasoga as in gili, you are appreciating a very tangible experience. Whereas tainug can be some type of, as I was going to say, you could have like a desire, nesava kosh baruch hu, or the inner desire of a person to have a home. It's not, or an inner pleasure from learning or something. It doesn't have quite the same. Well, learning is that's a sugar, but it doesn't. It's more of it's an intangible inner pleasure. It's more of the way I explained it. I think when I wrote in Samavov was simcha is a defined expression. Simcha is more like a verb almost, an experience. Tainug is more of a state of being. Like simcha, I'm going to have simcha. I'm going to celebrate with someone. There's an action involved. In other words, when you say a person is sitting alone and having pleasure, you don't call that simcha. I mean, I know technically you could say the word happy, joy, celebration. I'm happy. But we're talking breaking into chassidus, the real dissecting it into real words. Sitting alone, like he seeks out the melech that has shashuyim ba'atzmi. He has his internal delights and stuff like that. Very intimate, internal feeling about pleasure about something. Is more of a state of being. Therefore, the word passive. I don't know if the word passive is right, but it's more of a state of being and a noun as opposed to simcha being more of an experience and a verb. Of course, there's something like that, which right away makes one gili and one helam. Because experience is something else, is you're doing something. I don't mean that simcha is necessarily an action, but it's a state of being active. It's an active state as opposed to a passive state.
There was a word coined by an American poet. He called it isness, a state of being, and that seemed to fit timing, just in a state of being, which is timing.
Aval tainug hu behelam. But aval tainug, pleasure, is behelam, as opposed to simcha.
Okay.
Then he goes on. He goes even further. Kasher hay tainug mizgala. And when tainug is mizgala, something happens. This is going to be proof. It doesn't just happen. It actually disrupts the flow of the Greiches Gluim. In other words, when tainug is mizgala, when tainug does come out, let's say said earlier that the face illuminates or whatever it may be. So what happens is as a isha aliyah v'silig ba'keiches. It changes the keiches, it elevates them, and siluk here means it causes them to. It's like siluk in this case is similar to what happened when the Jews heard the Asayas HaDibros, and every dibur their soul expired of the great ecstasy of the experience. So even though he's not calling it, siluk HaKeiches is essentially the keiches like leaving their natural state.
So if you were in the middle of an idea, and the idea gave you tremendous pleasure, your motor would, so to speak, turn off.
In a certain sense, that moment, turn off, and it would all become so to speak, absorbed by, and by the pleasure would just so dominate.
The pleasure, where I heard it, is that time penetrates everything, so to speak, just like.
Well, it doesn't use those words, so I'm very careful with
here
this.
He's not saying, but the way I heard it explained was that was the way I heard it explained, that it penetrates everything.
I don't know if he wants to say that here. He wants to really prove here that it's Helam. And when it's Begili, it disturbs the Gili. I think that's what he wants to say here. He's not trying to say necessarily the virtue of the Tainuk. He's speaking more of Chachma. Remember, the context here is that Chachma is Gili and Tainuk is Helam. The Zel Gam B'Tainuk, let's read. The Zel Gam B'Tainuk HaMesha V'Sanefesh Shua Tainuk De'er Yosher. This is even when Tainuk that Mesha V'Sanefesh, Tainuk Mesha V'Sanefesh is like psalmim. Things that pleasurable scent, or anything that revives or rejuvenates, reinvigorates, regenerates the nefesh. That's Tainuk De'er Yosher. The Koshkem B'Tainuk De'er Chezer. Again, this goes back. He said it all earlier. He discussed this. But then he also brings Tainuk there.
Okay. So
that's I just saw it before when I was going through the pages. Let me just look again.
It's been too long. I forgot, or I never understood it.
No, we may not have emphasized it enough. He's referring for sure back to things he said. He's not just throwing in a line.
No,
that
he explains.
Yeah,
it's for the future.
Right.
He's so
the Tainuk. Where is the Makif Yosher Chezer thing? I think it's the Sukkos Minor. Yeah, it's the Sukkos Minor. That I do remember. Here we are. It's Ha'isa Sukkose. Okay. Page. I know this is the man. I'm just looking what parak it is. Page. Just give me a second. I'm just looking quickly. Okay, Tav Yud Ches, Perik Reish Vav. And Perik Reish Zayin. Perik Reish Vav is Ayin Yosher. Perik Reish Zayin is Chezer.
That's where he's giving the 4 examples of Ayin Yosher?
I don't know about 4. This was said. One second. Hold on.
I don't know if I can save all of them.
Okay, I don't know if he uses Makiv Tainuk there, but if I were to speculate, I don't know if speculate is the right word. Tainuk of Mesha V'Sanefesh is Tainuk that is Yosher. You know why? With me?
Yeah. Okay.
It's like this. It's a Tainuk, let's say, that you have from strong spice. Or let's just take a physical example, and as a result, the Tainuk draws out energy from the nefesh and reinvigorates the person, revives the person. That's Yosher. Why is it Yosher? Because it's drawing out. The Tainuk v'Chezer would be the opposite, where you're going inward, and it's not necessarily giving you more keiches. It's going inward up and deep, intimate Tainuk inside of you that is not necessarily reviving anything. That would be Chezer. The difference being that he's trying to say is that even the Yosher Tainuk that revives the nefesh is also Silika Keiches. That's what the even is. He says Even the bottom line is, again, remember the case here he's making here is that Tainug is a Helam. Tainug by itself. That's it. So it says, right. So he's saying even the Tainug that brings out the Gilui, something to revive you, is also so-called disrupting and Aliyah and Siluk HaKeiches. It's not, for example, like he's going to say, Chochmah comes out, it doesn't disrupt the Keiches. On the contrary, that's the Gilui that brings the Das and so on. When Tainug comes out, it's not like it starts bringing, it doesn't become a gradual gradation like, being a Das, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, or no Das, or whatever.
Sounds like Gilui here means something useful.
Or something Lefi Erech maybe, because Tainug is in its own world. So when Tainug shines, basically it's like the king has arrived. The king has arrived, it's not regular functions. Chochmah is part of the functions, the first step, that's what it means, Reishis Hagilui. Reishis Hagilui means the first step of human experience.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Tainug is not the first step of human experience. Tainug is in its own world, it's like in its palace, and when it does come out, it creates when I say disruption, not necessarily negative, it's aliv, it's not the orderly, so he's saying that even Meshav is a nefesh, and definitely the Tainug, so gam, the Zehu gam b'Tainug ha-mefesh ha-nefesh shu ha-Tainug Kolshkein, and for sure the Tainug of Erech Chezer is definitely one that, because you're completely in your own inner dimension. Look, in Chassidus it speaks about the Eibishter very simple. The Eibishter is in his palace, so to speak, in his Heichel HaMelech, where people don't go. Yeah. And his delights, what does he have delights in? He has a delight in Maisein Shel Tzadikim, or he has delights that we can't even comprehend. There's no relationship there with him. In his own world, it's completely in his own department. Here it talks about Torah being Shashuyim Atzmi. The question is, remember the interface is, how does that connect to us? So we have an Elul Melech Basada. Okay. But the king is not in his Heichel when he's in Melech Basada. He's come out to us. We want a connection to him as he's there, as Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So, and that requires a whole that's the interface of Chachmas Tema ultimately. That's why this is so vital here. Because Tainug on its own is God. As close, it's not Atzmus, because obviously Atzmus is even beyond Tainug, as he spoke, but it's Atzmus on God's terms. It's like Erein Sof, Lifnei Atzimtzum, or Erein Sof as it's encompassed in the source. So yes, it's the beginnings of a connection, because remember, the Tainug is going to become a Ratzon, and the Ratzon will become Chachma, etc., etc. But on its own, it's in its own world, and therefore, when it does get revealed, it becomes like the Keiches, everything gets are completely, submerged or overwhelmed by them. And this is all types of Tainug, even the Tainug that does bring out some. Hari Ein Ze Gili Adayin. So bottom line is that's not yet a Gili. Now he's speaking about Ratzon, I guess, to fill the picture out. Ratzon b'chinas merutza. Okay, so compared to Tainug, Ratzon, as we learned also earlier, by the way, there's also a whole parak about that, same parakim. Ratzon comes from the word merutza. Merutza means, the truth is merutza means that he's satisfied from something. But merutza, as he said, also means to run towards. It means Ratzon is ready to hamshachas hanefesh to something. Going towards, being drawn to something. Shehu hamshacha v'gili. He said all this earlier.
This part I remember a bit
yeah.
where it is.
Yeah, same place, the same the parak after, I think. Hari Eina Er Pnimi. You see, it's very brief here, because the Chayri you say Hamshacha v'gili, you think that's Er Pnimi. But he's not saying that. Ratzon is the Merutzas HaNefesh, so even though it's Hamshacha v'gili, but it's not an Er Pnimi yet. That's what he really means to say. Okay? The Reishis HaGilui, now he goes back. And the Reishis HaGilui, the beginning of the Gilui, meaning so Ratzon, absolutely, you want something, so it's the beginning of going towards something, but a big part of the Hemshech, as I said earlier, Ratzon clearly is not an Er Pnimi. It's still not one of it's not the order of Hamshacha v'Gili. I think to go back to the example, let's say of building a home, you have great pleasure inward, you envision what kind of home you'd like to have. Then you have a will. a will to have it. All this on its own, Tainig and Ratzon, have nothing to do with implementation. There's no execution involved.
Right.
Without it, you're not going to do anything.
Right, of course.
But with it, it doesn't have any. It's not any tool. The first place where implementation begins in reality is with Chachma. Someone comes, or you come, and say, now, I'm going to translate this into a plan. Chachma is the concept. Bina fleshes it out. The rest of the structure, brings it into all the details. That's what it comes down to. But Ratzon and Tainig remain so-called the foundational elements. They're the driving force behind it. But they're not tangible tools. So if you say, I want or I have desire to learn, that's not learning. Learning means sitting down and reading and using your chachma to understand this, which would not happen if you didn't want to, or you didn't have a desire to. But it's not, you can't call Tainig and Ratzon gili in that sense, in the Reishis HaGili. Because as the Alter Rebbe once told the Chassid, who was a great mind, he said to him, but he didn't use his koiches properly. So he told the Alter Rebbe, says, if you would learn, you'd be such a lam. And he says, Rebbe, but if I could, that I could. And since I could, I have the capacity. So the Alter Rebbe said to him, Ganef is not someone who has the capacity to steal, but someone who steals. A lamdan is not someone who has the capacity to learn, but someone who learns. So to say, for example, a person has a desire or a will, or that's even less than a will. He just has pure potential. But meaning, you could have Tainig and Ratzon, but it does not mean that you're doing it. Doing, which is structural, starts with Chachma. So that's the Reishis HaGili b'chinas. Because pnimi hu keich HaChachma. U'kumeikein hu l'mayla. Remember, this was all in the nefesh. U'kumeikein hu l'mayla. The same thing is also above, meaning in Seder Shtalshus and Atzilus, the b'chinas HaChachma, b'chinas Gilui. So just like in the nefesh, something l'mayla. The Chachma is b'chinas Gilui. U'chidua sha'Chachma nikra Eir. I was adding. Chachma is called Eir, which makes it even stronger. Before he called it Olfana, Aleph, the teacher. Now it's called Eir. How do we know? The Zohar, of course, is a pasuk, and I guess the Zohar teaches Don Nahira Kadma. This is the first light, or the Kadma, the first initial light, which is referring to Chachma. Chachma mitzad atzmei b'chinas er v'gili. Now he goes back to the mitzad atzmei. So Chachma on its own is er and gili.
Is this being recorded?
Yeah. Good. Ubchinas uksiv v'hachachma techaya. Chachma also techaya gives life, enlivens. Shachayish ubchinas gili dafka. I mean, he's bringing a very, very energizes. Chachma energizes or gives life, enlivens. So again, when a person, with Chachma, someone who's wise, you go to a wise person, they say something, it gives you, it gives you chayes. He's bringing all the proofs that of Chachma and its identity of Chachma is gili, and not in its mitzaratzme, Chachma mitzaratzme. So we have three things that I counted: Ulfana, which he said in the beginning, Aleph teaching, which is b'chinas hagili, in the previous page, bottom. Now he said Vahi Eir, and Eir is Chachma, and Eir is Gili, and now Chachma Techai.
Both are Pnimi.
They're all Pnimi, yeah. That all shows that Chachma is not just Pnimi, Gili, it goes Gili Dafka. Vainu, the Hascholas, now it goes back, Vahainu, summing up. The Hascholas, Esses Fiz, that's the same Pchinas HaChachma. The Fishur Reishis HaGili. And this is what we say, the beginning of the Esses Fiz, that starts from Chachma. Why? Because Chachma is the beginning of the Gili. The Reishis, the head, the top, the initial Gili. Okay, here we go. The Inyan Atzilus is Gili Ein Sof. The Inyan, why do we need Atzilus, is in order for there to be Gili Ein Sof, as we know in the world. The Kamoshes Kosher B'Zoyhar, the Atzilus Esses Vidus. So Atzilus will begin the Shtamudin Bey. That the separation, the emanation, the imparting of the Esser spheres of Atzilus, that Atzilus is begin the Ishtamudin Bey. It's one of the reasons that creation. in order that we should know Him within Him, to know God.
That begins in Atzilus.
Yeah. So if you don't have Atzilus, you have Ein Sof, you have Keser, whatever, or even higher than Keser. You have no relationship, no way of knowing God. And according to the Zohar, the begin the Shtamudin Bei this. It says in order to know Him, Shtamudin from Yediyah. Oba Pardes Kosev, in Pardes of the Ramak, he writes, Atzilus Shmoy Shala Ein Sof Moira Alatz Musay. That Atzilus is like the name of Ein Sof. It's like how Ein Sof, the infinite, manifests in a world. So basically, Atzilus Moira shows on Moira is a demonstrate Moira Alatz Musay reflects and directs us, directs us Moira Alatz Musay more than Moira. It's Moira. Points to, directs us, Moira, or shows us the personality of Atzmos, basically. I mean, Atzmos is, in the words of Pardes, is not necessarily the Atzmos we talk about.
Yeah.
Why is he bringing this? Okay. Because he's trying to say that Atzilus is a way of us relating to God. He's going to bring why you need Chachma. Now this is the summation of the interface. So Atzilus is the interface, but Chachma is the beginning of that interface, or the essence of that interface. And therefore, the beginning of Atzilus, what he's adding here is that, till now he just spoke about Chachma being the Reisha Sagili. Now he's adding and going even deeper. The whole Atzilus is to bring Gili Elikus, Gili Ein Sof, which means to know God, for us to have a relationship with God. And therefore, the beginning of Atzilus, since Atzilus is to know, is Chachma, because Chachma is knowing. Chachma is the beginning of an understanding. It's the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning process of Bina and Das. So to get to Atzilus to fulfill its function, the first step is knowledge. If Chachma was Helam, it defeats the whole purpose of Atzilus. Atzilus is to be Gili. Helam we know, but there's Helam before Atzilus. So the whole point of Atzilus is Gili himself. So the beginning of Atzilus has to be a nature, but Etzem Gili. He's making such a solid case that Chacham is Gili, because then which is critical here, because that's the second half of the interface. Because if Chacham is be'etzem, let's just for argument's sake play devil, say if Chacham was be'etzem, Chacham is Tima, and Chacham Glui is incidental, we got ourselves a big problem. Because then we don't have then Chacham is really its identity is really in Kesser. And it's not on the terms of Atzilus and Gili. It's critical that Chachma be fundamentally a force for Gili, not a force for Helam. Chachma has the power to go into Kesser and the Helam of Kesser. Has the power to go into the unconscious and is rooted there and can travel there. But it's critical that there's another side of Chachma, which is what he's talking here. Mitzad Atzmei, Chachma is a Gili, because that's the whole point of Atzilus.
Why couldn't we just have a functional aspect of Chacham Simo as being Gili?
Well, first of all, the word Stima does not mean Gili. Stima means concealed. The functional element of Chachma Stima is Chachma Gluya, obviously. That's exactly right.
But we're saying it has to be the essence of...
No, the essence of Chachma, because you see, if Chachma is fundamentally a Kesser dimension, then we're back to square one, in a way.
That's what I'm missing. In other words, it has to be mamish in essence in Atzilus.
Right. However, at the same time, let's continue reading. He's going to speak about it. At the same time, it's a traveler, we said. Remember, it's an interface. Remember, Chokhmah has to be on our terms for this side of the interface. It has to also have the terms of that. What he's trying to say is that Chokhmah Mitzad Atzmei is on our terms. Chokhmah, as it goes, has the ability to also go into another place. So it serves that type of interface. Mm-hmm. Remember, in this Hamshech, the focus is, he needs it to be part of the parameters of existence. The interface of bringing Elikus into our parameters. So the more Chokhmah is in our parameters, the better it is. The question is, can Chachma also bring in the divine parameters? And that's the Chachma Stamah part. Remember, at the end of the day, he said that Chachma is really Tainug. Also. So what is he talking about there? You could say the Etzem Hus of Chachma is Tainug. He said there's no, Tainug is Chachma. So now he's saying the Etzem Hus of Chachma is Gili, and Tainug is not Gili. So clearly Chachma has two opposites. And I guess it's going to say Chachma Mitzad Atzmei, its individual personality is Gili, but its Mochus, its soul is Tainug. That's the interface part. I mean, this needs obviously plenty of explanation.
He's going to say that right here.
Yeah, but let's what we're doing now is going. Let's get the pshat, and then we'll get the havana better. I don't want to because I'm sure there's going to be lines here that are going to. I'm just trying. This is the context. I say that's why it's critical never to go away from the point of departure. We're talking about an interface. He's asked a question. Keser Atik belongs to Ein Sof. Arich is the Reish Netzalim belongs to the Netzalim. Where is their interface? So all these pages and pages and pages is coming to teach us how there's this entity called Chochmah that has so many dimensions to it. So obviously we're going to find seemingly contradictions, but it's not contradictions, it's different aspects to this interface. So like if, let's say, an ignorant person comes over and sees, you speak Hebrew, I speak English, and the translator is translating. Someone said, 1 second, does the translator speak English or does he speak Hebrew? So the answer is, when he listens, he speaks both. When he's speaking to me, he's listening to English and translating to you in Hebrew. When when he hears you, he hears the Hebrew. But from an outside point, 1 second, which one is he? The answer is that's what an interface is. An interface is but the bottom line is yes, he has the capacity for both. I'm just giving that as an example. So it's not a contradiction to find someone say, 1 second, so which one is Chachma? Is it Tainug or is it Gili? The answer is both. But to really understand it, he's dissecting. That's why I'm emphasizing the word Chaya Chachma Mitzad Atzmei. Because that's the Rebbe Rashab's words. Mm-hmm. I guess when he said before that Tainug is really Chachma, there he used the word that Etzem. Here he said Chachma Tainug be'etzem uchusa. So if you were to distinguish right here, Chachma Tainug be'etzem uchusa, and here he says Chachma Mitzad Atzmai. So I guess that's the distinction. Chachma Mitzad Atzmai, Chachma be'etzem uchusa.
Really.
That's what I would say right now before we continue reading. Let's just continue here. Okay. Because the whole point of Atzilus is Gili. Good. Okay, now. Same thing. Even Chachma Stima concealed with unconscious Chachma, but since it's the level of Chachma, so that's what it's called, Hagili. So since we talk now that Chochmah Mitzad Atzmei is Gili. Now, therefore, you have to say that even Chochmah Stima, as it's in Keser, is the Moker Hagili. U'lechein be'emes hascholas atzilus in the Chochmah Stima. And therefore, really, in truth, the haschol of Atzilus is really Chochmah Stima. You added now a key point, obviously. So we got here now, the interface has now stretched the boundary of Atzilus into Chachma Stima, not just into Chachma Gluya. Because since Chachma Mitzad Atzmei is Gili, so the sherish of that, which is Chachma Stima, has to also be the Mokar of Gili. It's not Gili, but he says clearly, L'chem be'emes ascholas Atzilus in the Chachma Stima. That's a real Chiddush. U'kamoshe kosav haramaz. Ramoshe Zakuto. Parsha Emer Daf Peches. The Ramaz says on the Zohar in Parsha Emer Daf Peches. 1 second. There's a long parenthesis here, I see. Yeah, there's like 10 lines, okay. Oh, K'moshe Kosor Ramaz, Pasha Emer Ish Beches, that's it. Daf Beches. That's what the Ramaz says. Now the Rebbe Rashab is not saying this Chiddush on his own. The Ramaz says, I'd love to see that Ramaz inside, I will look it up later, that Be'emes, the Hascholos of Atzilus is from Chachma Stima. That's the Ramaz. That means it's a Chiddush. He wouldn't just bring it like that. That's a Chiddush Gomer here. Okay. And now he brings in a parenthesis. V'cheinu klolos inyan ha'chachma. And the same is with the v'cheinu the general inyan of chachma is gam b'shashim mekeda erishim ba'atzma seidei sof. Now he's going all the way to the root. The same thing chachma, the way it's in its first sherish makar. That's emphasizing not the makar in chachma stima. in its first original makir, in Atzmus saying it itself. Where's Chachma come from? What is it? Shahu inyan mashabidis atzma yedeya. Okay, we have to stop here for a moment. I need to give you an explanation here. I need to give an explanation. You with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. Remember, a small little introduction. Even though we're speaking here, obviously, in the specific levels of sources, so it goes. For example, Bina comes from Chachma. First you have a concept, then Bina fleshes it out. Same thing with other levels. Like generally they say all the midas start from Chesed. Chachma Gluya comes from Chachma Stema. Chachma Stema Chetzenis from Primis Chachma. Primis Chachma Stema is Tainug. But obviously it's all rooted in Atzmus. And this parenthesis, which is probably why it's in the parentheses, is a serious qualification, not qualification, a real explanation that's necessary here. Because remember, this interface is critical to make the connection between the higher than Atzilus and Atzilus. Fine. Maitzil and Atzalim. But the bottom line is, the real connection is ultimately to Atzmus. So whatever we find the levels of Ishtalshalos is also in a very subtle form in Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and all the way even in the Godhead, so to speak, in Atzmus itself. So why don't we just talk about Atzmus? Because in Atzmus it's so amorphous and so non-tangible, it's all in a state of potential. So Chachma that we have, ultimately, is really rooted all the way in Atzmus. Atzmus has the concept of Chachma. Like we say in the Tikkun Ezer, that Chachma lo b'Chachma yediyah. He has it, but he doesn't. But it's not the way we understand it. It's like non-existential Chachma. When we talk about Atzilus, you have to remember, and this is why I'm qualifying, Atzilus is not some world that is, you travel there and it's a level. Atzilus is the gili of the keiches that are within Atzmus. Okay, like you said, like the Pardes said. Atzilus is not called Bria. Bria is a creation that's Yesh Ma'ayin. Yesh Ma'ayin simply means that it doesn't reflect the Ayin. It's a new entity. Of course, it's rooted in godliness, but you can't say it's a extension of godliness until we reveal the godliness within it. It's a Yesh. Oyer is a reflection of godliness, like Oyer reflects the sun. But the sun, for example, let's say warms the earth, and the earth becomes warm because of the sun. The earth is not the sun. It's not like a reflection. Yet ultimately, obviously, if you really saturate the earth with the sun's light, it can become fuel for the sun. So in Ruchnius, and therefore the creation of the world is Bria. Atzilus, on the other hand, is essentially Gili HaKeiches. It's how godliness manifested in the Odom HaElyon, in a tzir, a structure that would ultimately become the structure of existence. And as the light would diminish and the kelim would emerge, we'd ultimately. That's why when we say a human being is tzelem Elokim, obviously God has no tzelem, no shape or form, but He chose in the koich hagvul of Elokus He has also the power to manifest a dimension of godliness, not God, in structure. That structure in early stages is very abstract and like hiuli amorphous, but as it evolves and you conceal the light, the structure begins to emerge. No different than, let's say, something under the water conceals it all, but then when you push away the water, like the tzimtzum, then suddenly the gvul emerges. So what he's saying here is really critical if you really think about the big picture, because he's going back to saying that that Chachma really in its root, there's something in the God, in Atzmus, that is the root of Chachma, which will later become the root of Chachma Stema as it's in Keser, which in turn will connect to Chachma Gluya in Atzilus. So what is that root? So that's why I wanted to give this introduction. The root is, we have to finish in a few minutes because I have to go somewhere. It's 8:10. How much time do you have? Do you have a schedule? Maybe we'll just finish the parentheses.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so it goes like this. What is the root in the first root, Chachma? So it's evidence of Masha, Yudiyas Atzma Yudeya. It's an expression from the Rambam.
Yeah, of course.
And the Alter Rebbe brings it in Tanya,
Sure.
Hu Hamada Hu Yudeya, that God, by knowing Himself, He knows the whole universe and the whole existence. Yeah, but Yudiyas Atzma, we're saying Yudiyas Atzma. Atzilus is how it unifies with Atzilus is Uhu V'chayu Echad. So he's one with the das.
Right.
But here he's using it in reference to the Atzmus. So when basically how Atzmus knows himself, there's an element of Chochmah there. But it's not like we know Chochmah. We know Chochmah as an outside thing. I know there's a table here. It's not like I know myself, therefore I know a table, because there's no table inside of me.
Right.
But since Atzmus is Kol everything, so it's like how he perceives a dimension of himself is how he sees existence. Actually creates existence as a result. So he's saying in the parentheses like this, okay. Bottom line, he's saying that he's going to say that this is a gilui. That there's the element of Chochmah being gilui. Even in Atzmus, there's an element of gilui in that context. That's what he says here. In other words, he's saying like this, 3 steps here. First he said that Chochmah, it's Mitzad Atzmei is gilui, not as opposed to Keser and Tainuk, and Ratzon which I held. Then he said that therefore you have to say also Chochmah Stimah is a mocker for the gilui because and therefore the beginning of Atzilus. Now he's going in even in Atzmus where Chochmah is rooted, the first so-called inkling, the first glimmer of wisdom is when God knows the universe through knowing himself. That God knows himself. That's also by just saying Yidei Atzmei, Masha Yidiyas Atzmei. What's the difference? Does God really need to know himself? No. He exists. He's reality. He's Atzmus. But as soon as he manifests in what we call Yidiyas Atzmei, it's a Gili al Atzmusei al Kaponim. It's like you sitting by yourself, you're not speaking to anyone, you're not writing anything, but in your own mind, you're already thinking how you're going to communicate or how you're going to know something else. So it's already a Gili L'atzmei. It's a form of Gili, it's not Helam, basically. The Gili HaYediyah L'Atzmusei Hu B'chdei Liyas HaYediyah Be'elamus. Why does he need to know? Because in order to have the Yediyah in the world, he has to have a Yediyah in Atzmei. So that means there's an element of Gili. The L'chera, how the L'chera ain't a moving. Man is Chaz B'Yediyah Zu B'Atzmusei. Shal Atzmusei Yedua Gam Kedem Shen Netzol HaYediyah. Why do you need to say, and what's added, what's Nischadish, what's innovated here, by saying that Atzmusei has Yediyah Zu. Even without him knowing, so to speak, knowing himself, Shahari Atzmusei Yedua Gam Kedem Shen Netzol HaYediyah HaKlula B'Atzmusei. If you really want to go in Atzmus, he doesn't need to get to a level saying, B'Yediyas Atzmei, through knowing himself, he knows others. He is who he is, Atzmus, and automatically he knows everything. Why do you need to state that level? What does it add? Okay. Since anyway we're saying it's only Yediyas Atzmei, how do you do Gam Kedem Shnetzala? In other words, since it's anyway
finishing the question.
Right. Since anyway it's Yediyas Atzmei, that's how he knows it. And when Netzala, when the Yediyah is emanates from him, it's only to himself. And B'Atzmusei, he knows it even before it emanated. Essentially, it's like asking the question: is there room for Atzilus within Atzmus? Why do you need that extra step? Achayin, the reason is, the answer is Achayin who the Kedem Shnetzol Yediyah Behelam B'Atzmusei. Wow, this is basic. Before it manifested in a Yediyah in Atzmusei, it was Behelam. V'lo hoya oz gili Yediyah klal. Then there would be no revelation of Yediyah, and bottom line is, back to the problem would have no connection. And therefore, you needed a step that Chochmah should be Netzal, should be imparted from. How it's Nochel and Atzmus, where it's Helam, Liyas HaYediyah Begili B'Atzmusei HaKaponim. That at Kaponim in Atzmusei there should be some dimension of Gili, B'chdei Shetiyah Atzilus B'chinas HaChochmah B'chinas HaYediyah B'Neshamas U'Be'elamus. V'Hayim Hashem Yisborah Le'el Perek Mem Zayin. We have to look there to see more. In other words, again back to the interface. If Atzmus would have jumped and just said, Atzmus, and then suddenly you have Chochmah, and there's no Yediyas Atzmei, then in a way you never really have that connection to Atzmus. Yediyah, there's no jump because it's too big of a jump. The fact that God on his own did not just remain completely Behelam. First step was that he said, let me manifest in something that I know, I'm aware of. That awareness it's still an atzmos, it's true. But it's already a step that allows for Gili to begin to have meaning. Or else they'd be back to the same thing, that atzmos would be here, and Gili would be here. So in other words, you need a little Gili within himself. That makes us, I'm just trying to find an example. So let's say you go to Big Melech, you go to Rebbe. Yeah, he could tell you what to do. But if you know that he sat in his room and prepared himself with a plan for you, so even though it was all within himself, but it means he came down and is somewhat related to us. It's not like, he's there and then it's just like there is a commonality, basically, a common denominator. Very, very interesting. This is deep stuff. Okay, I think we should stop here.
Is that what it means that the Alter Rebbe wasn't alone and we were alone? Is it commonality?
What?
Is that what it means that the Alter Rebbe wasn't alone and we're not alone? So Rebbe's not
Alone?
Yeah, the Chiddush of Chassid.
I mean, yeah, you could say that. What, I'm not sure what you mean to say.
A commonality. If you know there's a commonality.